Welcome to episode 127. I got the number right this time, Johnny. 127 of the Half Point Per podcast. I'm your host, Evan Riggs, joined as always by my co-host, Dalton Willie, and back from a hand injury, producer Johnny Fan. Johnny, how's the hand feeling today? How's the finger feeling today?
Man, fingers not great. As some of you saw, Evan tweeted out a picture leaking it, and a day later, now I'm out for the season. So look at that, Bengals. You played yourself.
You know what? We tried to get you on the injury report, but it just what was not able to happen.
Yeah, with the flight, air compression, that's kind of what it's there for.
It's
a nice little split.
It's very common for podcasters to put compression on like their wrist or their hands when they fly, just in case of swelling.
Yeah, it's a known thing. It's completely different. This was a door was in the way. I shut the door and then just didn't move, and then now we're here.
What I did not do is delete my tweet because we have nothing to hide. I feel like if you delete the tweet, you do have something to hide. Bengals.
That was bad. Maybe the Bengals should get fined.
Under investigation, and then they're just hoping we forget. I will never forget that because people lost money on that, and the NFL is just like.
By people, Johnny means he lost money.
No, people lost money on it.
That's very fair. If we're just starting off the Players We're Thankful For podcast by airing our grievances, that holding call on the Zay Flowers touchdown, that was tough scene for my fantasy matchup, tough scene just for us Zay Flowers truthers who have been waiting for the big play. It's either he gets overthrown or it gets called back on some BS, and that's what happened. So that was tough.
It was tough sides. I'm sure we'll chat more about Zay Flowers here later today.
I intentionally was not going to talk about him, but as the thumbnail alludes to, as the graphic on the YouTube refers to, we're talking players we are thankful for today, Dalton. We each have 3. We're also going to hand out a couple trophies, kind of like last week, maybe a couple repeats, maybe a couple new ones. And then we're going to start off, though, with good old-fashioned, who's that Pokemon? Dalton, do you want to start us off, or do you want me to?
I can get us started off here. Mine won't be as fun as yours, I'm sure. But let's just get ripped and right into it with who's that Pokemon.
Who's that Pokemon?
Yeah, try something different there and let you read the hints and then me do that. But I felt like that wasn't really taking. So now
I was waiting for it.
Now you're teed up.
There was no preparation there, and I was unprepared.
You should just read my mind next time. Thanks.
It fell flat on its face, and that's a great hint leading into this Pokemon. He is a quarterback in the NFC. He has played 93% of his snaps when active. He averages 26 pass plays a game. His average depth of target sits right at the league median at 8.5 yards per target. He has a fine 63% completion percentage, and he's only taken sacks on 12% of his dropbacks, which puts him in the bottom 20 of the NFL. Who's that Pokemon?
So can I ask a clarifying question while you loudly snack over there? The 93% of the snaps while he's active, any chance the 7% that he didn't play was because he got hurt during a game, or is it other? Is it Geno Smith is why I'm asking, because he just got hurt and missed multiple drives in the fourth quarter.
He did get hurt during a game. He is not Geno Smith.
Okay. 93% of the snaps when active. What NFC quarterback is getting sub? Oh, is Derek Carr?
No, you went south. This guy is north.
I just thought, Taysom Hill. I just that's all I'm stuck on. I was trying to think of what quarterback is not playing every snap. Desmond Ritter,
he got hurt in one game, and that's why he doesn't have a full 100% when active.
I mean, I'm I'm like a fifth of the way there. I was just guessing the entire NFC.
You are. I'll give you another hint. And this one will probably do it for you. His PPR rank right now among quarterbacks is 19th. When healthy, though, his rushing alone accounts for 38% of his total production.
Justin Fields.
It is Justin Fields.
There we go.
Yeah. Justin Fields surprisingly has better stats than I thought when I looked at it. The Washington game really skews a lot of this, to be completely honest with you.
He would have hit his over had he not gotten hurt and missed multiple weeks, which is a really sad way for me to lose that over under that we argued about before the season.
Yes, I'm glad I won that one. But
not over yet. Not over yet.
But he played really well last week, and he actually looked like he's doing better. I don't know if you saw the main beat reporter for The Athletic for the Bears reported that Justin Fields is playing for his spot next year. It seems like a lot of people.
Well, they're going to have a top 2 pick, maybe multiple top 2 picks. So, like, can you really pass up on Caleb Williams, Drake May? Like, can you pass up on both those guys in favor of Fields again?
Yeah, could be really interesting to see what happens. He's playing better, and he looks like an every week fantasy starter with the way that landscape is shelling out again, which he didn't look like in the first 3 weeks of the season.
It's going to be really fun when history just repeats itself with a different quarterback this offseason when the Bears have a top 2 pick. And, well, either the Bears just do or don't take, like, maybe the Bears will just not take somebody, which I think would be a mistake. I think it's turning out to have been a mistake had they picked the right guys last time around too. And then we're also going to have another corner of Twitter that's like, please let the Bears draft somebody and get Justin Fields to Atlanta. And then Atlanta's just going to not have any interest at all. I can't wait for that epilogue of the offseason.
Yeah, we'll have a nice round table of where will Justin Fields end up, and the answer will most likely be his second string quarterback on his own team.
No, that's like he'll be a starting quarterback next year.
If they draft quarterback, we don't know. We don't know.
Look around the league. We've talked about how bad quarterback play has been all year. You're telling me nobody is trading to get Justin Fields if the Bears draft a quarterback?
I would hope they would, but you never know with this league.
I mean,
nobody was willing to go out and sign Lamar, and look at Lamar now.
Yeah, but like you would be trading for him. He probably wouldn't be incredibly expensive. He's still on his rookie deal. I mean, Tampa Bay, just off the top of my head. Obviously, Green Bay will never happen via trade, but that would be obviously one that, like in a Madden world, makes sense. Let's think of the NFC West. NFC West is, you know what would happen is the Rams would trade for him. He would be the backup. It'd be like the Trey Lance, Dak Prescott, where like he gets traded to the Rams and he's a backup until Stafford retires.
We just never get it.
Oh God! All right, who is that Pokemon? Gonna jump to mine. Here.
Who's that Pokemon?
So this running back, I'm not even going to give you conference yet because I feel like both of mine are kind of obvious based on hints, but I just wanted to talk about both of these players a little bit. He played 85% of his team snaps last week. He had 15 rushes and 6 targets, 21 total opportunities. And if you just don't look at the raw numbers for this guy this year, but you have to look at like the efficiency stuff. He's first in yards after contact per attempt. He is second in explosive run rate, and he's first in first down rate rushing the ball this season. Go ahead.
15 rushes and 6 targets.
Yeah.
I think we have the same guy.
Do we? Oh, just hold on. Let me just give these next couple, and we'll see if Johnny can get it. Since week 8, this guy has outsnapped his backfield mate, and he's run routes on over 50% of the team's dropbacks in each of those last 4 games. He's taken every 2-minute drill snap in those. And Johnny, since Dalton, Dalton is shaking his head, so I think we have the same one. He is in the NFC, and his backfield mate has outscored him this year, but he has outplayed him for the last month.
Is it Brian Robinson?
No, it is not Brian Robinson. That would be everything. Well, Brian Robinson is a little bit over half the snaps, and he is outscoring Antonio Gibson by quite a bit.
Is it? No, it's not DeAndre Swift.
His
Face
rush
off.
NFC.
Oh, okay.
His I'll give it one last hint, and then Dalton, we can see if we have the same guy. His rush share, which just the percentage of rush plays that he is carrying the ball for the season is just at 33%. So this guy,
Jahmyr Gibbs.
nope, not Jahmyr Gibbs. That's a
good
solid.
one.
That's a solid guess. That's a solid guess. But this guy has not had very much volume until last week, and Jahmyr Gibbs definitely fits that bill. Except he was about a week earlier coming on. This last hit, well, and it's not even, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but he's like not inside the top 40 in RB scoring this year.
It's got to be someone just worthless.
Whoa.
Tony Pollard.
A funny guess, but no. This is Zach Charbonnet. Dalton, is that your guy?
Yeah, it was Zach Charbonnet. When you said he had 21 touches last week, I was like, yeah, that sounds like my guy.
Yeah, and it was hard. Like I couldn't say because he's like RB like 39. It's like, oh, if you know that he doesn't have that many points, like all these things, like it doesn't take too long. So I was trying to be careful with what hints I gave there. But yeah, what's interesting about Charbonnet, obviously Kenneth Walker goes down. He's got the hip deal. Don't know how long he's out. The volume could be very exciting because he has not been getting the rushing work until last week. He got it all basically without Kenneth Walker, but he has been playing all of the passing snaps, not all, but the majority of the passing snaps all season. They clearly trust him there. However, the bad thing is his next 3 games are San Fran, Dallas, and Philly. So like you want to get excited about Charbonnet because the volume is going to be there, but the matchups might be tough sledding.
Yep. Yeah. It seems like it's there, but like you said, the matchups aren't there. He plays Dallas and San Francisco in his next 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
Not good fit. And then Geno Smith's health seems suboptimal, which is going to be even worse for that his share. So I can't wait until next year when we get into a nice debate about whether or not he's good. And everybody forgets everything that occurred around the context of when he finally got his shot at a full-time role. But he looks primed. If you've listened to us and taken our advice and held him on your bench, you finally have a guy you could probably start every week and at least hope he gets a full workload of touches. And then,
I mean, any running back that's getting 20 touches, which he may have for as long as Kenneth Walker is out, like unless that guy is just trash, which he's not, you're just starting him and holding your breath at worst.
Yeah, exactly. So it's super exciting just to see what he can do. There are definitely some plays last week where Charbonnet did things that Kenneth Walker could probably do better. Like there are a couple of plays where he didn't make the safeties really stretch out, but he also was more efficient between the tackles.
He doesn't have exactly. He doesn't have the long speed, which is what it's kind of funny. His explosive rate is second. That must be like, I bet you he has a lot of 15-yard rushes, and he probably his long is probably like 25 yards. He can probably he probably has a large amount of runs, percent of his runs that is between 10 and 18 yards rushing.
Yeah, exactly. He's never going to be the guy that takes the ball 80 yards unless the safeties crash down on the wrong side of the field.
Yes. All right. Well, since that was your last one here, let me get my last one.
Who's that Pokemon?
So this is another one that is kind of tough to give hints for without just completely giving him away. This guy is a wide receiver. I will not say what conference unless we need more narrowed down a little bit later on here. He just had a season high 66% route participation last week, and he's seen his route participation increase in each of the last 3 weeks by a pretty substantial margin. His ADOT is almost 17, but he is 3rd on his own team in air yards, but he has also only played about half the games. So I bet you if you took that on like a per game basis, he may have like the most air yards per game on the team. He did have a touchdown call back 2 weeks ago. Otherwise, we'd probably have back-to-back weeks where it's like, oh, this guy scored double digits. Like I'm feeling pretty good about him, but not multiple weeks, but just 1 week of scoring double digits in a row. at this point. This guy's biggest issue is drops in volume, 15% drop percentage and 9% target share on the season.
So he's a deep threat for sure.
Kind of seems.
And
And he scored a touchdown this week.
I didn't say he scored a touchdown. He got a touchdown callback 2 weeks ago. Otherwise, he would have had like back-to-back double digits.
But he had double digits.
He had double digits, yes.
Okay.
I didn't say he did or did not score a touchdown, to be clear.
Third on his team in air yards, so there's probably 2 guys in front of him.
Wow. Great guess.
That was
I'm working
amazing
through this, all right?
analysis. Amazing.
Listen,
This is what people tune in for.
You didn't give a division?
No. Do you want a conference?
Well, he's a deep threat who should be good, didn't play the full season, and drops the ball a lot.
I think you know who this is based on that.
Well, I wanted to say Quentin Johnston.
Oh no,
I don't think it's Quentin Johnston.
Not Quentin Johnston.
I think it's another guy that we've really hoped for and haven't seen anything from for 2 years. Jameson Williams.
Yes, it is Jameson Williams. I just wanted to talk about him a little bit because he did just score a touchdown.
I was right.
and he's had some games where he scored touchdowns before. Obviously, who can forget last year he had 1 catch for 40 yards and a touchdown. But what is encouraging is the route participation, like up to 66%. And even the week before that, he was in the, I think it was like mid to low 50s. He was down in the 30s before that. And it was like Kadarius Toney level usage and snap shares. And so that is going up. And if you just do a Google out there
there's no way you just said do a Google
on Jameson Williams. And what you will find is a nice story on The Athletic and a nice story on ESPN where Dan Campbell seems pretty pleased with kind of how he's finding his footing. If you go look at David Montgomery's 75-yard touchdown run against the Chargers, that does not happen without Jameson Williams throwing a block, catching back up to the play, and throwing a massive block towards the very end of it. So not that obviously equates to fantasy, but what it is doing, I think, is getting him on the field. He's getting more opportunities, and I kind of think we're building to a potential nice finish for Jameson Williams to this season.
Yeah, well, and a lot of that's come to the detriment of Josh Reynolds,
Yeah.
who was, he was a top 30 wide receiver the first 6 weeks of the season,
Mhm.
pretty consistently scoring, and his snap share has dropped off consistently. In addition to that, last week was a little anomalous for that Detroit Lions team that got blown up by the Bears for 3 quarters and then came back. But Jameson Williams, that touchdown was pretty impressive.
The fact that he was in the 50s in snap and route participation the week before that too, so it wasn't just that game.
Yeah, and then he even turned around to catch the touchdown.
Yes,
it was nice. That was a good play from a guy whose his coach was calling a bonehead. So it's getting there. We are finally getting there. The Jameson Williams breakout may be upon us, and who knew Jared Goff would be the one to deliver it?
Oh, Jared Goff. Boy, talk about weird starts. He just could not throw interceptions for a solid hour.
For the first time this season, basically.
Yeah, and it's I didn't bet on the lines to cover the spread, but I had a parlay where I had Detroit minus 2.5, and I was really and I ended up hitting. I was really good. I was like, how am I going to lose this by the Lions losing at home to the Bears? Come on.
Oh, man. Yeah, it could be Jameson Williams season. Maybe a little fantasy league winner, some are saying.
Maybe not league winner, but he could have a nice little finish. And he does have that kind of upside just based on pedigree. So we can see. We do have a couple questions in the chat that we can get to here. First from Chandler, by the way, did guess Zach Charbonnet in the chat right before he was said. So shout out Chandler for that. He said Burrow was his quarterback. He unfortunately died.
True.
Traded Justin Fields and Mike Evans for Josh Allen and Terry McLaurin. Thoughts on that deal? And also Josh Allen's bye is the first week of the playoffs. That's tough. That must mean he has a double match, like a double week playoffs where every matchup is 2 weeks, or maybe it's just a bigger league. Yeah, that's tough on the bye weeks. I don't know. That's kind of tough. I actually think I don't know how big of a difference we're going to have between Fields and Josh Allen down the stretch. So I think Unfortunately, I like the side that you traded away more than what you got back, especially given the bye week. But I do like Terry. Obviously, Josh Allen's awesome. So I don't think this is like a home run either way for either person.
Yeah, no, I like getting Josh Allen. I mean, he's number one right now in QB scoring, in points per game, and in total scoring. Number one player. And that offense seems electric, and that defense is so bad that they are going to continue to have to put up 24, 31 points a game to stay in it, which I think they're more than capable of. Just the bye week is now, so you got to plan ahead and see what matchups are favorable for those waiver quarterbacks and hold.
Well, he is planning ahead because now he's asking later on, should he trade Amari Cooper and James Conner for Ramondre Stevenson and Brock Purdy? That would give him a rental for that week. So he doesn't have to start Bryce or Minshew, or I'm assuming Bryce Young is that second name. And the answer to that is yes. We both like selling Amari Cooper. Connor is fine, but I kind of think Stevenson could be in for a better finish than the year he's had so far. It's been about as bad as possible. Not that offense is going to get a ton better, but it's been slowly getting better for Stevenson down the stretch here.
Yeah, no, I think it'll continue to get better for him, but I don't mind looking ahead and doing that trade and kind of insulating your quarterback room.
Another question from George Play01 for this week: Tua or Justin Fields? Dalton, do you know who the Bears play? I know, obviously, the Dolphins get the Jets on Black Friday, first ever Black Friday game.
Yes, and I'm selling everything I can to not watch that game. The Bears get Minnesota, so I think I would probably start the field side of that.
Me too.
I know they got lit up this week, but I don't think the Jets defense is at all bad. And what they do best is pressure, and what Tua does worse with is pressure. So it's really the two things you don't want to see.
Well, and that Dolphins offense is just like, it's kind of being overshadowed because the Chiefs offense is doing it to a bigger extreme right now, but they are slowing down right now to a pretty big degree. Part of that schedule, part of that is teams adjusting. So yeah, I'm on that field side as well. All right, do we want to go to guys we're thankful for and then close out with the trophies, or do we want to do trophies? My thought process is I think we're going to be more of a negative tone with the trophies, and obviously guys we're thankful for is more of a positive way to close out the Thanksgiving pod, but I'll let you pick.
Yeah, let's get the negative out of the way here. Let's eat our veggies first before we have dessert and talk about some bad moments with these trophies here.
Okay. All right. I will let you go first. You let me know when you've got your drop trophy coming up here.
Sweet. I'll go ahead and start with a rehash of last week with the "You Are Not Serious People" trophy from Secession. If anybody's seen the clip, I think we'll probably add that because I think it's a weekly one I enjoy. In preparation, this trophy was going to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Congrats. You fired Matt Canada this morning. So
How did we copy a trophy? How did we pull this off?
They don't
trophy and a Who's That Pokemon?
They don't get it. I'm not giving it to him because Canada. I have gone ahead and said you're serious enough for the moment. First time since 1941 they have fired a coach in season. That says a lot about Matt Canada.
Okay, shut up. I've got a lot to say about that later. Okay. What's your actual trophy?
But this trophy goes to the Tennessee Titans. First of all, Ryan Tannehill requesting to be released and watching the entire fantasy community scream for him to go to the Jets was fun on Twitter Sunday morning. But this team lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars 34-14 in an absolute blowout fest. In that game, they gave Derrick Henry 10 touches. In losses this season, Derrick Henry is averaging 11 touches a game. And they simply are refusing to utilize him in any way whatsoever, despite the paycheck, despite the fact that underlying stats, on his targets per route run, he's having a career high, which doesn't say a lot because he doesn't run a lot of routes. But he's still 19th in the league in offensive success rate behind the 32nd ranked offensive line. He is still an efficient runner, and they are simply refusing to put the ball into his hands while they let Will Levis, who since his first outburst has not been a strong player, put the game in his hands. Their success rate with Derrick Henry on the field is substantially higher than their success rate off the field. So, do I sit on a throne of lies, or is that? I think you muted yourself, Evan.
I said that's it. That's mine. I'm getting mine ready.
Oh, okay. But all in all, just looking at the Tennessee Titans, they're not playing serious football, and between the fantasy hope of Derrick Henry and I know DeAndre Hopkins ended up having a touchdown, this team is in full fade territory for every player, including Derrick Henry, who was a very high pick in fantasy drafts and somebody we've relied on for so many years.
Well, what's frustrating is the one thing that Will Levis is still doing well is throwing the deep ball. So you would think the way that they would get him comfortable and help him find success would be to establish Derrick Henry and go play action shots over the top. Like that would be the formula. That was their formula, forever with Tannehill, except it was more like the deep crossers instead of the 40-yard bombs that Levis can throw out there. But like, I don't really know why that just isn't the formula. It feels like they're throwing too much at Levis, which I get wanting to see what he can do, but you also want to kind of give the guy a chance and give him some layups, help him find a rhythm, so maybe he can do some of those other things that they're asking of him right now, and that is not going very well at the moment, to the detriment of, like you said, everybody in this offense. God dang it, I can't believe I just did that again.
Yeah, well, and the worst part about it is normally when a running back starts seeing a decline in usage, like the backfield mate is exciting. Tajay Spears is a very exciting player. We really like him, but they're also not using him. Like he'll be on the field, they won't use him. So it's this like running back by committee where neither running back is getting any work, but they're willing to go out there and throw 7 times to Kyle Phillips. And it's really not conducive to fantasy, and it's not conducive to winning games. And then you just top it all off with a touchdown to Jeffrey Simmons. Those big man touchdowns are fun when the team is playing well, and they are not fun when you're trotting out these trick plays and you're playing well.
You're down multiple touchdowns and you're throwing a touchdown to your defensive tackle. That was like the ultimate screw you to fantasy football managers, which maybe that's where Arthur Smith gets it from.
I was going to say, I swear to God, Arthur Smith phoned a friend to Mike Vrabel and was like, I need your help. These guys are at my throat. I need you to take them off me. And that's what Mike Vrabel did. So, I mean, they're just not serious people in Tennessee, and they don't know which way they're going to build. It's a terrible situation, and I hope Derrick Henry finds peace when he retires, because I think his career is over.
Okay, for my trophy that I've completely given away in multiple ways at this point, the Buddy the Elf, you sit on a throne of lies trophy.
A throne of lies.
We'll do that one again.
You sit on a throne of lies.
This is the one that Matt Canada has the great honor of receiving on this day of his firing. And the reason why he gets this trophy is because what did this man do to convince Mike Tomlin, one of the better coaches in the NFL, never been below 500, been the Pittsburgh head coach for what is it, like on year 16, 17? Yeah. Probably at this point. What has he done to convince Mike Tomlin that he deserved 2.5 years before he was ultimately let go? Like after the first season, and really during the first season, but especially after the first season, we all knew that this guy is terrible. All he jet sweeps, throw to the outside, like this guy calls a high school offense. And he said something, it was about a month ago, that was just triggering to me, triggering to Steelers fans, triggering to any fantasy football managers who may have come across this. He said that their offense, quote, just isn't built to come back from deficits. It's like, no, actually, you have one of the best 15 receivers in the NFL. You have one of the best 10 tight ends in the NFL. You have George Pickens, who, we're not the biggest fans of, but he is a perfectly good wide receiver too on the NFL offense. You even have Najee Harris, who's like an okay running back. You have Jalen Warren, which just shout out to that guy, man. PFF's finest this season. Jalen Warren finally getting a little bit of a larger role. And that's another thing where it's like, maybe we don't want Jalen Warren getting 80% of the touches. We don't know if we do or not. But I can tell you what, anybody on the planet could have told you that he should be getting more than 7 rushes a game, which is what he'd been getting for the last year and a half until the last 2 weeks. And what has he done? Over 100 yards a game, busts a 75-yard run, where, by the way, at some point in the beginning of the fourth quarter of that game, I heard the announcer say that the Steelers had 165 total yards and 75 of them were the Jalen Warren touchdown run. Just inept offense with great weapons and a quarterback who, we've never, none of us are buying Kenny Pickett as a good NFL starter. I am, however, not buying Kenny Pickett is this bad. This is via Warren Sharp. He is the only non-rookie quarterback to go 4 consecutive games of 160 or fewer passing yards since 2012, besides Christian Ponder. That is how bad it's been. He's never had a top 12 fantasy football scoring game at the quarterback position. They have been outgained as an offense every game this season, yet they are above 500 somehow, or maybe right around it. I've lost track at this point. 28th in points per game, 28th in yards per game, 31st in passing yards per game. No games of 400 plus passing yards in the 2.5 years of Matt Canada. 1 game of 300 plus passing yards. Think about that. Think of that. 1 game in 2.5 years of 300 plus passing yards in today's NFL. I know offenses are slowing down this year a little bit, but that is still crazy. 2 games of 30 plus points. This is the wildest one to me. 7 games of 2 or more passing touchdowns. Just absolutely inept offense. I am so happy all of those guys are free. How much better will it get with Kenny Pickett at quarterback? I think remains to be seen, but I think it will get better because this guy was bad in college, failed his way up, and was terrible the entire time as the OC. And, whatever throne of lies his resume was that got him this job, it should have been seen through from the get-go.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you saw Mike Tomlin's presser today when they asked him what he wanted to see out of the offense, and his response was, "I just want to see more points." It got so bad. Everybody's seen the video by now of
Chris Boswell.
Of Chris Boswell,
yes.
Where Matt Canada's walking to the locker room and he's celebrating, and he's like, "I don't know why you're celebrating. You didn't do this.
This wasn't because of you."
This wasn't because of you. I sent this to you earlier, but there's a clip of it's a very clear swing route by Jalen Warren where the 3 wide receivers on the left side of the field are supposed to block for him, and they all 3 run routes. And Jalen Warren catches the swing pass, gets tackled for a loss. And that is the ultimate ineptitude at the NFL, where it's supposed to be pristine and clean, and they're doing the opposite of that. Deontay Johnson had a crosser down the middle of the field where he was wide open, and Kenny Pickett didn't even look his way. Part of that's on Pickett, but it is so difficult to justify the level of failure that this offense consistently puts on film.
Yeah.
And this is funny because I saw this earlier. The 2 30-point games the Steelers had under Matt Canada, both of them had multiple defensive scores.
Oh, I'm sure. I would have bet everything I owned that was the case.
It's so incredibly bad. Gardner Minshew this year has more passing touchdowns than Kenny Pickett in 2 years. And Gardner Minshew hasn't played a full season this year. There is no justifying what he did. And the fact that it took 2.5 years, the first year I kind of get because a lot of the speculation was that Big Ben wouldn't do play action. He didn't want all this fancy motion in the offense. Yeah. But it turned out it wasn't Big Ben. It turned out it was Matt Canada.
Well, he still doesn't have a good quarterback, but you cannot have a good quarterback and still – you have great weapons. It is possible to have a competent offense with this quarterback and these weapons. Instead, in his 2.5 years, they score under 20 points 28 times. It's just it's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing.
Nathaniel Hackett, you're next.
And then coming for Stanley out in LA next after that.
Yeah. One by one, they go down.
All right, Dalton, your next one coming up here. You want to tell us what the name of it first is, and I will give you the drop.
This is the Doe Award from Homer Simpson. It goes to this goes to the weekly player who just kind of left it out on the field when it was all there for them. We alluded to this a little bit earlier. Is going to our boy Zay Flowers.
It was not his fault.
Well, if you notice, there's 7 does in that one, and that was done intentionally because Zay Flowers leads the league in touchdowns that were either dropped or called back on a penalty with 7. This season, Zay Flowers has had multiple opportunities to break open. He's been very consistent,
and that's
like
not
11
even
or 9 points a week.
That's not even probably including Lamar Jackson has missed him on 2 long touchdown passes.
Yeah, it doesn't even include those. But 7 times this guy has missed out on the opportunity. He's either been in the end zone, there's been a flag on the field, or it's been a drop pass credited to Zay that more than likely would have led to a touchdown in multiple of these situations.
And I think that's only happened twice that I can remember. Like I think a handful of those are penalties.
Yeah, I don't have the splits, but that would be a 2-7. And it's so close there for Zay Flowers breakout. He's had a fine year. I would probably call it like almost a Tyler Boyd-esque year where you're getting 9 points, you're getting 11 points, and that's about what it is. With the Mark Andrews injury, we're going to probably see this offense change the way they use their receivers, and maybe that will come to the credit of Zay Flowers. But just for fantasy managers' sake, can he just have that 1 week he breaks out and he gets that touchdown, and we can finally feel good about him in our starting lineups?
Well, don't worry. All that needs to happen is he goes on my bench. Calvin Ridley last week to the bench. You know what he does? 28 points. Zay Flowers to the bench this week. It's happening this week, folks. So you guys can fire up Zay Flowers. I'll take one for the team and put him on the bench this week. And, it's not just him. The most frustrating thing about just all of it to me is that you have Zay. I think he finished with, it was like 5 for 43 or something like that. Should have been 6 for 100 and a touchdown. Then you also have Rashad Bateman, who catches 1 touchdown. He should have had another 50-yard touchdown down the sideline, so he could have gone like 2 for 65 and 2 touchdowns. Instead, we get 4 for 113 for Odell Beckham Jr., while these 2 young receivers who we both like are just have points left out on the field that were not their fault. So it's just frustrating in that regard for both of those guys.
Well, then on the callback touchdown for Bateman, the next play is the same crosser, but it's Nelson Aguilar, and he scores the touchdown.
Yeah, and the ball got tipped, and then he caught it in stride. So it was a very weird play.
Yeah, just incredibly frustrating amongst those 2 and the Baltimore Ravens offense, which we were so right about. Just the producers, we were a little off on.
I still don't think we're wrong about that. It's just been a string of horrific luck, especially for Zay Flowers, which you just talked about. Worthy of the award, no doubt. All right, my next one is a repeat from last week. This is the Chris Traeger Stop Pooping Trophy.
Stop pooping.
This goes to none other than our hometown team, the Kansas City Chiefs. Our offense, specifically our receivers, we've all seen the stats. 0 points in the second half since October 22nd. I know there's a bye week in there. That is still 3 full second halves where they have not scored. Justin Watson, 11 targets on Monday night. Amon-Ra St. Brown, also 11 targets. Like that, he's getting a alpha wide receiver 1 type of looks. And he is obviously not producing alpha wide receiver 1 type of numbers. Multiple drops, multiple mistakes. MVS dropped what would have been the game-winning touchdown. We all saw that. And we've talked about this ad nauseum just amongst the 3 of us, but I just cannot for the life of me understand playing those guys, the snaps that they are, and playing them like together out on the field so much too on top of that, because they're very similar players with a very narrow skill set of strengths and all of the same weaknesses. And the strengths are also the same. They can both, get open deep. They're both good deep threat guys if they actually finish the route and then, God forbid, catch the ball after they do that. But they can both do that, and neither one can separate quickly, separate over the middle, separate versus man coverage on anything but a flyer post, basically. And why this is an issue outside of just us being Chiefs fans is like you have other guys who could be producing good fantasy days who are suffering in Rashee Rice and Kadarius Toney, and then just like obviously the offense as a whole. It's hurting Mahomes, it's hurting Kelsey, it's hurting Pacheco. Like these are three guys that you should be starting, and for the most part, having good days, like good to great days, and that's just not happening because this offense is just so stuck in the mud right now. Like Rashee Rice last night, Monday night, played 57% of the snaps, which is fine. It's more than he was earlier in the season, but that was also his lowest since week 6. What on God's grid? Like, why coming out of the bye? This guy's clearly been the bright spot in this terrible receiver room this year. Why is he playing 57% of the snaps? And like, you just can't start him with any confidence because he's not getting any real targets, like real targets. It is all at the line of scrimmage, very short stuff. Like this is a guy who was 15 or 16 yards a catch in college. He was doing a lot of the stuff that we want to see him doing in this offense in college, and he's just not been used like that. And you know, you just can't. You're taking basically a Russian roulette chance by starting him until we actually see him do that until we see him have a good game where it's actual legit receiver stuff, which I'm pretty sure he can do. And then you just have like Toney, who you're obviously not starting. He's probably not on your roster. This is just mainly frustration for me at this point. He plays 28% of the snaps after I would bet half of that was on the first drive. And after you get Aikman and Joe Buck saying, oh, we just got the impression he's going to be more involved this week. And then he just wasn't for almost the entire game after that. And 28% of the snaps was his most since week 6 as well. And his snaps are just comical if you go and look through his game log. Then you have guys like MVS and Sky Moore who have combined to run almost 800 routes this season and have 39 receptions between the two of them that show for it. That is impossible. Like that is impossible to do. MVS was almost half the snaps last night, which was actually a season low. So maybe we're seeing a trend. We're going to see a trend there. He obviously did not help prove that he should get more snaps. But Justin Watson, 63%, tied for a season high, which he also did against the Jets. Just out of curiosity, if I asked you to name the Chiefs' best offensive game that was not the Chicago Bears this season, because that game just wasn't real, what game would you say?
Is it the Lions game or the Chargers game?
I mean, I just ask like your opinion, just your opinion.
Probably the Chargers game.
Like Justin Watson was injured, didn't play that game. Just food for thought. Just food for thought.
That makes sense. Yeah, well, the worst part, Mahomes, 26% of his passes have been, 26% of his incompletions were drop passes this season.
It's actually it's 21% of his incompletions, but 26 total drops. Which that 26 is first in the NFL by 5. The Jets are second with 21.
Yes, and most of those the Jets are Allen Lazard, which inflation to have there, but. Obviously, the biggest fantasy hit has been to Mahomes. He has not been like a consistent quarterback one or what he made most of the points last night on the ground. And then, like, even more frustrating is the team comes out and they play inept in the entire second half, and they had the most rushing yards in the first half that the Eagles have allowed in the end. And they run it 9 times the second half, and you would have expected like a Pacheco game if they're going to be doing well there. But all of the fantasy contributors, sans Kelsey and Mahomes, aren't even being involved in the offense any longer. And there's really no explanation from the coaching staff as to why that is going. And I know both you and I are pretty involved with the KC sports writers, and the majority of them also have no explanation for involvement from quote unquote better players.
Yeah, mainly it's Toney and Rice, and both those guys need to be on the field more and getting the ball more, and that has been a discussion happening for weeks. It came to a definite boiling point last night. I know Toney cost them the game in week 1. It was about as bad as it can be, but we're in week 12. I don't think he's had a drop since then. Now, he hasn't had a ton of opportunities, but like, what are MVS and Justin Watson doing to earn all these opportunities? It's frustrating for those guys from a fantasy perspective. And like I said, frustrating because it's holding this offense back, hurting Mahomes, who you took probably in the 3rd round, hurting Kelsey. And I think also Kelsey's just not healthy, which is not helping things either. But yeah, just frustrating. Chiefs have definitely earned the stop pooping trophy for this week.
Yeah, absolutely terrible. Well, I think that wraps our bad up.
Yeah, let's go to players we're thankful for, Dalton. Easy transition here. A painful one, actually. Players we're thankful for. I'm going to go with Tyreek Hill to start to start us off. Everybody knows how good he's been this season, but we just really haven't talked about it that much because it's obvious. Like, you're starting Tyreek Hill. If you can trade for him, you're trading Tyreek Hill. There's not really much advice there. But this is a chance for me just to kind of shout out a couple guys who have been awesome this year and who I'm thankful for. He has double digits in 8 of his 10 games this year. He has 20 or more points in 7 of his 10 games this year. He's at 21.5 points per game, which is a full 2 more points per game than Keenan Allen, who's the wide receiver 2 this year. Cooper Kupp's Triple Crown year a couple years ago, he was at 21.6 points per game. And just for perspective, last year, Justin Jefferson was at 17.9 points per game. And if you look at the last decade, it's pretty much between 16 and 19 points per game. In most years, 2020 Devontae Adams, 21.5 points per game. And then Cooper Kupp in 2021, and now Tyreek Hill, if he continues, those will be the only 3 guys to average 20 or more points per game at the receiver position in the last decade. So, like, what he's doing is historic. He's on pace for over 2,000 yards right now, 2,077 to be exact. Calvin Johnson's record, 1,964. He is on pace to break that quite easily if he's able to stay healthy. And it's not even just a 17 versus 16 games thing. Calvin Johnson was 122.8 yards per game. Tyreek Hill right now, 122.2. So he is like right there on Calvin Johnson's pace. I honestly think this should be the year that an MVP goes to a non-quarterback, and I think Tyreek Hill is the leader of the pack as far as that goes.
Yeah, some fun facts too. Post-bye, Tyreek Hill's already had his bye. He's second in all scoring amongst all players. The only player above him is Josh Allen, and the only player who hasn't had his bye, by the way. And that's a quarterback he's outscoring. And then below him is Christian McCaffrey, who's also had his bye. So absolute stud there. Somehow you nailed like a CMC Tyreek Hill build on your team. You are living.
Yes.
He also has as many offensive touchdowns as the New York Jets do, which is also really hilarious. And in all, even with that tough Dolphin schedule we've talked about, he is probably on pace to be the wide receiver 1 to set multiple records in the NFL. And I mean, there's nothing you can say about it. It's the most solid player in the entire fantasy landscape right now, other than CMC.
Yeah, and even CMC, like, I'd have to go look at his game log. I don't think he has scored 20 or more points 7 times. Like, he's had more games where he's been in the like 15 to 18 point range than Tyreek Hill, I think.
Yeah, it's just inevitable with Tyreek Hill at this point.
Yep. All right, your first guy.
My first guy is Zay Jones. This is an extension of Calvin Ridley. I'm thankful for Zay Jones because he makes starting and sitting Calvin Ridley the most predictable and easy fantasy piece of advice I can give anybody. In the 4 games with Zay Jones, Calvin Ridley averages 8 catches, 101 yards, and he averages 6 catches, 90 yards, and a 0.75 touchdown, so almost exactly a touchdown a game. Without him, 3 catches, 36 yards, and 0.17 for touchdowns.
Yeah, and Ridley has 4 100-yard games this season. 3 of those are with Zay Jones in the lineup. Zay Jones has played 4 games this year.
Yep. So as long as Zay Jones is healthy, Calvin Ridley gets way better usage. Disregard the fact that Zay Jones was off the field for the Calvin Ridley touchdown this week, because what matters is that 3 weeks ago, Evan showed the graph, they were consistently throwing to Calvin Ridley on the hashes. When Zay Jones is in, they would use Calvin Ridley in the middle of the field, which is where he excelled with the Atlanta Falcons, which is where he's excelling with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Unfortunately, I think Doug Peterson just doesn't have the personnel to work anybody else outside, which is why we suddenly see Jamal Agnew getting all these down the middle targets and everybody's losing their minds. So every week, Zay Jones is active. Every week, I would then put Calvin Ridley in the top 15 wide receiver conversation. Every week, Zay Jones is inactive. I would put him outside the top 30. It's a pretty cut and dry on-off split, and at this point, I'm pretty comfortable with it. It's only 4 games of data, but I think the routes, the targets, as well as the route trees on next-gen stats all really confirm what the data is saying, which is a healthy Zay Jones is good for Calvin Ridley, and an unhealthy Zay Jones is bad for Calvin Ridley. And by extension, it's healthy for this entire Jacksonville offense. Trevor Lawrence had the best game of his year last week with Zay Jones in the lineup. He's just a very consistent producer for what they need and the style of offense they're running. So I'm incredibly excited to see that he might be back to full health, and we could be heading towards a fantasy finish where if you were patient with Calvin Ridley and if you were patient with Trevor Lawrence, you could be rewarded for that patience.
So this is Calvin Ridley this last week. On the surface, it may not look as much different as you would have thought, but look at where some of these start.
Yep.
In the slot, even some of these that end up on the outside, they're deep overs. They're starting from the slot. They're out routes. You see multiple out routes. This was not what his chart looks like for the full season. Like, I wonder if I could go back and find one.
Yeah,
It's
you
like,
see the week filter. I think that'll give it to you.
yeah, I don't know if I want to just like go. Oh, here we go. I want to know what that. I don't remember what week that Saints game was. Oh, this is gonna be a process. I can do it though. Hold on. You keep talking.
Yeah, I also think that we're heading towards a really good place. The Jaguars. I know he didn't miss any time, but Trevor Lawrence did get hurt on a play 5 weeks ago, and I think it really hampered him. And he's slowly been working back to full health. And it has been a tough ride for Trevor Lawrence truthers in the NFL. Obviously, starting with the coaching debacle his first year, and since then he only has one 300-yard game. But the fantasy production is starting to pick up, and this entire Jacksonville offense is starting to pick up. And we're starting to see a little more of what we're going to get out of it. So back to locking in Calvin Ridley in my weekly lineups and feeling incredibly good about where we're going from here on out with him.
Yeah, I don't know what to do on next gen stats. I am only able to pull individual games from only a couple games, and it's different games for different guys. And all 3 of Ridley's individual games are games that Zay Jones has played. So that's not helpful. What I did see on next gen stats, and I'm glad I did because I this guy, he's not on any of my lists because I thought he might be on one of yours, but I did want to shout out Jaden Reed, and I did just see him on next gen stats. You realize he was the fastest ball carrier in the NFL this week on his rushing touchdown, 21.52 yards or miles per hour.
That is insane.
79% route participation was a season high, 14% target share, 3 rushes, no Aaron Jones, at least for a little bit, maybe a little bit more involved on the ground.
He did pop up on the injury report. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, we'll see. I would have to see if that actually like keeps him out. But yeah, could be a nice little finish for Jaden Reed. Shout out Jaden Reed. Anyway, second guy I am thankful for is none other than Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, he's got to be the most under the radar elite fantasy football player there is. And I don't say under the radar as in people don't know he's good, because everybody knows he's good. Everybody loves him, but people love him. But then he's ranked as like the wide receiver 8 in weekly ranks. And even if he's ranked at the wide receiver 5, it kind of feels like, oh, if Jamar Chase wasn't on a bye or whatever, it's like he'd be immediately bumped down a couple more spots. But all this guy has done this season is do a wide receiver 6 year through 11 weeks. That is with his bye week and with missing a game due to injury. If you just look at points per game, he is the wide receiver 4 ahead of guys like Stephon Diggs, like AJ Brown. I bet you like AJ Brown had 5 weeks of 125 or more receiving yards, set an NFL record, and he is averaging fewer points per game, just barely, but fewer points per game than Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I think the reason why he's just not thought of that way is he doesn't do it like those other elite guys. It's more in the Cooper Kupp mold where even with Kupp, it's not quite the target percentage. Like the target percentage is great. The target share is great, but it's 28%. It's not above 30%. It's not that top 2 or 3. It's more like I think he's the 11th highest in target share in the NFL. Air yards are 31%, which is just a tick lower than Adam Thielen. So like there's nothing sexy about the way Amon-Ra St. Brown gets the job done, but he's been above 70 yards in all but one game this season. The one time he wasn't was that Green Bay game where they literally threw the ball like 3 times in the second half because they were ahead by so much. And he was still the wide receiver 13 that week because he scored a touchdown. He has one finish outside the top 20 this season, and that was because he fumbled the ball. He still had over 100 yards in that game. He's had double-digit scoring in every game this year. He might be the most consistent position player in fantasy football this season.
Yeah, and I think part of it is he plays like this big slot role, so it's not as exciting as some of these outside receivers. But, I mean, it's all there, and he's doing it with Jared Goff at quarterback, which before this year I think a lot of people would have papawed at. So it's exciting.
They would have what at? They would have papa. What does it mean to papa something?
Haha, laughed at it, whatever.
I think you mean poo-pooed.
Yeah, I mean poo-pooed. I do. But just like we're poo-pooing him, I think he's here to stay. And as a 6th round pick, he's just an absolute steal for that Lions team.
Yeah.
And he, like you said, I mean, he's just Mr. Consistent at the position. Consistently gets above 7 targets, consistently gets above 50 yards, and consistently finds the end zone when they're there. Even on a run-heavy team in the red zone, he's getting the touchdowns. So there's no negatives about it. And he'll probably be a player who's not ranked in the top 12 next year for picks, but should be at least in that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, you said touchdowns, and he has 5, which is good, but not unsustainable. Like, it's not like he has touchdowns propping him up to an unsustainable degree. He is just very workmanlike, just getting the job done. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about this guy other than that he is awesome. And it's just as someone who has him on my team, it's just the best feeling to know that this guy every week this year so far, you can count on him for a very good to great type of game.
Yeah. Well, I'll go into my next guy, who's not a fantasy contributor this year, but most certainly will be a fantasy contributor next year. And it is Ohio State's Marvin Harrison.
We finally got to the thumbnail, the Marvin Harrison in the thumbnail at the 58-minute mark. So go ahead and explain yourself.
Okay. First of all, in a loaded draft, there's a legitimate argument for the Bears, who might have the overall number 1 pick, to take a non-quarterback when there are 2, what many believe to be generational quarterbacks prospects in Drake May and Caleb Williams. But there's also a fun game that I found on Twitter. Normally, when fan bases and teams are bad, you Twitter search that name of that team and the top quarterback prospect, and they're all tweeting them in jerseys. If you Twitter search Marvin Harrison, there are Packers fans, like imagine Jordan Love throwing to this guy. There are Giants fans, imagine Daniel Jones throwing to this guy. Every fan base that is in the top 10, I saw imagine Aiden O'Connell throwing to this guy. Never mind the fact that he's Devontae Adams. These are totally serious people excited about the prospect of Marvin Harrison Jr. joining the team. So I went and just gave myself a little gander at him this season. He's first nationally in 70-yard plus receptions, second nationally in touchdown receptions, second nationally in 100-yard receiving games. He currently is in the lead for consecutive games with multiple touchdowns with 3. He has 6 consecutive games with touchdown, and he's also the first Ohio State Buckeye with back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons and is in the lead at Ohio State for 100-yard receiving games. And that is incredible considering the caliber and pedigree of wide receiver that has come out of Ohio State the last couple of years. I mean, you have Garrett Wilson, Jamison Williams, Chris Olave, just Terry McLaurin, just to name a few players who are legitimate alpha wide receivers. And it is going – I don't see how, no matter where he ends up, he doesn't very quickly become a second-round pick which would be almost unheard of for a rookie wide receiver. And it's just going to be the most exciting offseason to see where he ends up and then to see him in the NFL. This guy is the size of Megatron and moves like Jameson Williams. I will be very excited when his combine measurables come out because I have a feeling that for a 6'4", 225-pound wide receiver, he's going to move much quicker than that.
We'll see how much he does at the combine. It's not like he's going to have to do anything.
And just the last thing on this, he's done all of this with Kyle McCord at quarterback, who is he sucks.
He's bad. He's bad.
He sucks. And he also has been injured multiple times this season and has still continued to be a producer and just to be an absolute dog. And I'm so thankful that he will enter the NFL alongside Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and immediately be thrust into that dynasty wide receiver one conversation.
Yeah, I mean, he's right there with Jamar Chase as a prospect from everything everybody says. I don't have much more to add to that other than he's awesome. I can't wait to have to do the Bijan thing again, where we have to be the wet blanket, because like you said, I think he probably is going to be like is it crazy to think someone's going to want to take him 12 overall? Someone's going to want to do it.
I mean, just go back to the other guy, 12 overall next year. Amon St. Brown or Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, and it's like if he gets taken in the top 5, which he should, and I think he probably will, if he's on the Giants, if he's on the Bears, maybe the Bears,
Patriots.
Yeah, Patriots. Like if he's on a team with a terrible quarterback, which unless he gets paired up with the Bears draft pick, that is probably going to happen. We are going to have a case of great prospect who we hope can be a great player right away, but we're not, we never know how quickly that stuff is going to translate. Like JSN, he's not the same level of prospect, but JSN hasn't been a no-doubter guy right when he got to the NFL. And it just takes different guys a different amount of time. Obviously, Justin Jefferson didn't even play for multiple games before he broke out a couple weeks into the season. But yeah, it'll be an interesting conversation, but a great prospect that is the overall takeaway. Not breaking any news here. My last guy on my list, Dalton, is Brian Robinson. Maybe a surprising one coming from me. It is not always pretty with Brian Robinson. Some of that is him, and not just like, I'm not saying it because he's not good, but just his style. He's a little bit like Amon-Ra St. Brown, where he's not a flashy guy at the position. He's not a make you miss guy. He's a grinder who will just keep making positive plays. And then you just have the Commanders, who that offense can just run so hot and cold. They can put up 31 on the Eagles and then fumble the ball a million times against the Giants, and he'll be stuck at 4 points for almost the whole game. And then thank God he scores a touchdown before the game is over. And this guy ended up with 13 points. Okay, he didn't wreck my day, but he is the RB4 this season, which is just shocking. Like, think back, he was going like basically back to back with Antonio Gibson in the early 30s at the position at running back. And if I told you that he was going to play 53% of his team's snaps this season and have 5 rushing touchdowns through 11 weeks, 10 games probably, you would not say, oh, that's the RB4. Like, it is shocking how good he's been. He does have 3 receiving touchdowns, and he's running routes on 35% of their passing play, 7% target share. All of that is fine. Like, you're probably thinking best case, like a fringe top 20 type of guy, but he has just exceeded that. As long as you close your eyes, don't watch the game, just look at the points it gives you when it's over. It's been a great, great ride with Brian Robinson on fantasy teams, where it is really hard to find guys you're thankful for at running back. I tried. I tried, and I was like, I'm looking through this list, and I am just not. I can't say Jalen Warren again this week. There are a lot of guys I am not liking right now at the position, but Brian Robinson, he is just been pretty consistent. Never scored fewer than 6 points. That doesn't sound like much, but Travis Etienne has been flirting with that number off of the bye week the last 2 weeks. He has been double digits for 3 weeks in a row, doing his part to help teams in their playoff pushes.
Yeah, well, and he is 7th among running backs in targets this season.
Mm-hmm.
And every name above him is a running back you would probably say gets targets. I mean, AK, CMC, Stevenson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Rashad White, and Josh Jacobs are all above him. And he's doing good with his targets, too. He's not being a slouch with it. There is a certain draft analyst who we will remain unnamed, Matt Waldman, who said specifically when he came into the league that just because he was a plotter at Alabama didn't mean he can't catch the ball, and he's actually quite good at it.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out he is. So, yeah, you can't say anything negative about him. Eric Bieniemy and company in Washington are working a good offense there, and he is probably the best dead zone running back we've seen since last year's Josh Jacobs. And that says a lot because Josh Jacobs finished in RB1, and with the way this position is working out, I could see Brian Robinson finishing as a top 4 running back where he's at right now.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I lost track. Do you have another one, or did you already
One
run
more,
out?
Uno Mas. This one's a quick one. It's Khalil Shakir. Over the last 4 weeks, his routes have gone up. Week 7, he was at 43%. Since then, he's run 72, 75, 70, and 74%. Through those 4 weeks, he has even out at the wide receiver 4 and only has 1 game outside of the top 20 in scoring. And that 1 game was week 10, where he only had 8% of the team's targets and only 50% of his targets were deemed catchable. His average depth of target is sitting at a nice 9.9. But really, the reason I'm happy for this is I hope the Bills see this and let Gabe Davis go. And then we no longer have to have another offseason discourse of Gabe Davis because he's a free agent.
It's that, and then it's the looming Dawson. I think the Dawson Knox thing is the bigger thing that is helping him right now. The fact that Knox is not around.
Well, and that is the other hope because those stats since week 7 was when Dawson Knox got injured. Yep. And hopefully the Bills continue to try to spread the ball out and use 11 personnel because it looks like their best offense in real life and in fantasy, quite frankly. And if Khalil Shakir develops into a reliable wide receiver 2 and is what Gabe Davis isn't, then we might finally also have a nice consolidated set of fantasy producers on this Bills offense, which we haven't had the last 2 years of Josh Allen. It's been Stephon Diggs and nobody else. Mm-hmm. And all of those are very exciting. And then finally, been a big fan of Shakir since he came out. Yep. It looks like the routes are there. Even last year in limited time, he did look like a good player and a good NFL player. So I'm just hoping that we round out this year. He does successful. The Bills let Gabe Davis walk. That conversation's over. We see Shakir in a wide receiver 2 role, and him, Kincaid, and Stephon Diggs go into 2024 as the guys in this offense that you want to own.
Yep. Agree on all fronts there. I've talked about my hopes for the Bills offense over the last couple of weeks too. Real quick before we get out of here, we have a doozy of a question. And when I say doozy of a question, I mean I don't know what to do for our friend in the chat here. Should he trade Austin Eckler and Jalen Waddle for Chris Olave, Travis Kelce, and Garrett Wilson? And then it gets even worse when you get to his actual team. I say worse, harder. His running backs are Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler, Jerome Ford, and Tony Pollard. His wide receivers are Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Amari Cooper, Chris Godwin, and Jalen Waddle. He does have Evan Ingram at tight end, so he has a startable tight end.
I'm leaning towards trade for Olave, Kelce, and Wilson because with what I saw from Austin Eckler on that run,
that was pretty bad.
I am so incredibly concerned.
Yeah.
And if Keenan Allen misses any time, which with Keenan Allen is very probable, I do not know how that offense functions. And I do not know how Austin Eckler gets any good running lanes. And then the days will get better for Kelce. I think Tim Boyle is a terrible starter, but maybe he'll at least hyperfixate on Garrett Wilson.
Well, we've seen literally everybody but Zach Wilson has had good days with Garrett Wilson.
Yes. So I would
that's
do
a
it.
good point.
I think having Pollard, as much as we hate on him as an RB2, I mean, it's fine.
Yeah.
And then with Chris Olave, you just hope it's a better starter right now than T. Higgins and Mark Cooper, unfortunately. And
Yeah.
Jalen Waddle has been like Mr. should have been every week, where we always expect it to be his big week, and he just has not done it.
Yep. Agreed. Yeah, I think I'm doing this too. I didn't really think about it in the sense of selling on Eckler, so I do definitely. I don't hate doing that. And on that note, guys, that is going to do it for episode 127 of the Half Point Per Podcast. Give us a follow, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Half Point Per Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube, and we will answer your questions during the show if you show up in the chat during our live show. If you listen to the podcast feed still, we appreciate you as well. The show is available anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, all of that good stuff. Leave us a 5-star review. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy all of the football, including the first ever Black Friday football game. How exciting. We will talk to you guys again next week.